right now, we're sitting here today having a good chat, but right now all across Australia there's men and women that are having their last day. There's men and women that are having their worst day. And there's men and women that just can't do it. And that really breaks me. That's really hard. It's just, you want to be able to do more, and you want to be able to do as much as you possibly can. It's not about saving the world. We're always going to have trauma. We're always going to have loss. But it's when you hear the stories of, my son was 17 or my dad just turned 40 and we had a great weekend, and I just got married to my husband and we've got 2 kids. That shit hurts.
That's Sean, founder of the Shaka Project, an increasingly recognisable charity doing big things for mental health in Australia. Sean shared his personal story on the podcast 3 years ago, so this time around we spoke about what life's been like since then, the highs and lows of working in this space, and our thoughts on where men's mental health is at now. Sean dedicates his days to travelling around the country, presenting talks to many different organisations, and he does it all while being a dad, a partner, a son, and a mate. Sean also takes it upon himself to personally console the loved ones of those who've recently died by suicide who reach out to the Shaka Project for support every week. Each heartbreaking loss hits him hard, but he and the rest of the Shaka Project team keep pushing on to change the future of mental health for the better. Welcome to Young Blood, the award-winning volunteer podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. My name's Callum McPherson, I'm a journalist, and this is a platform for everyday men to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the #1 killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a thing. Help us reach more people by taking 10 seconds to give the show a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you've got some feedback on this conversation, I'd love to hear it. You can vote in the poll and leave a comment on every Spotify episode. I read them all. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself. This episode is proudly sponsored by our mates at the Shaka Project. The Shaka Project was designed to ignite the conversation around mental health, encouraging connection, mateship, and brotherhood through the Shaka. Inspired by a dad's love for his mates and his kids. Go to theshakaproject.com to find out more about the epic work these guys are doing, grab yourself some merch, and follow their journey at the Shaka Project on Instagram. Sean, you did a post recently talking about the fact that every week Shaka gets messages from people who've lost loved ones to suicide, and that there was a day recently where you got 4 of those messages in one day. What's it like for you to receive those messages and to respond to those people?
It's heartbreaking. It really is. It sort of gets me to a point where you sit there and we put up all these posts on social media. We do all this work in the background and try and do as much as we possibly can to get more people talking, and we hear some great stories, and when we hear these great stories it really gives us that lift and that encouragement that this is doing a good job and it's having an effect. And then when we get these messages, it just breaks my heart. It's just like, what more can we do? What more can we do for not only all those men out there and people out there that are suffering, that are going through something, but what more can we do for society to make this conversation louder and something that everyone just needs to be having as well. And on a personal level, mate, it really, really destroys me because I've, like many people, have been on that cusp of suicide, and it's a scary place to be. It's absolutely frightening. And then, to think about that you've lost 3, 4, 5, 6 blokes in a day, and you think about how they would have been feeling that day, that moment, that last hour, the last 2 hours, it breaks your heart. It really does. And it's something that it's most definitely the hardest part about what we do. And I knew going into, having this as a full-time career, that was going to happen. And nothing can prepare you for the messages from sons, from daughters, from husbands, wives, mothers. When we get messages from mums, it was like that's the real tough one.
What do you say?
it's so hard to know what to say, and we can do the normal. I'm so sorry for your loss, and please let me know if we can do anything, and we can do all that normal, conversation. But majority of the time, I pick up the phone and I give them a call and just allow them to cry on the phone, or to tell me about them, or to ask me questions, or say what they need to say and get out what they need to get out. But it's so hard to know what to say. It's so hard to know how to approach, because this is somebody's world. It's just completely,
So that day you picked up the phone multiple times and spoke to multiple people who'd lost someone?
Yeah. I had 2 in the morning. So 2 in the morning, and then the third just after lunchtime, and by about 3 o'clock I was pretty mentally exhausted, and I'm very, very conscious of my own mental health, that if I'm taking on too much, I need to step away a little bit and turn the phone off, maybe go for a walk, go to the gym, and just take that mental health break. And just as I was about to go to the gym, I got another one. And I sat down with a woman for about 15 minutes, and it was her husband, and it was about 2 weeks before that, so it was pretty raw and pretty fresh. And chatting to her on the phone, and just trying to allow her to open up and tell me about her husband, and tell me about what she's feeling and what she's experiencing. As I said before, it breaks your heart. It also motivates you as well, to just know that this work is so important, not just for the people that do, lose their battle with mental health, but their family, their friends, their loved ones. The ripple effect of suicide is something that's, we can talk about it, we can have a look at, but when you actually see it and how far that ripple goes, that's the heartbreak that lives on.
How are you able to take all that on? I think most people would say, like, far, man, that's so intense. One of those conversations, or even I get it a lot, where people say, how are you able to do that podcast when we're talking in past tense about things that have happened to people and they've gone through, let alone on the day of, when people are so distressed, and then doing it multiple times and traveling around the country, having that conversation every day. Yeah. It's just that's a massive burden, one that I have no doubt you feel privileged to be able to carry. But how are you able to do that?
Yeah, I have to be careful, and there's been a few times where, I was in Perth last year, and I had 4 events in 4 days, and I remember waking up on the Saturday morning, and I had one more event before I had to fly back to Melbourne. And I woke up on the Saturday morning, and I packed my bags. I was just about to get in the Uber to go to this event, and I just broke down. I've been at these 4 events. They were really, really tough events. One was in remembering of a male that passed away, and there was 3 other ones that were just really, really tough to be there. And I woke up on the Saturday morning. I was missing my kids. I was missing my partner. I was exhausted, and I was mentally drained, and I had to cancel the event. I just, I called, and I just said, I just cannot do it. I can't come. And I got on the next flight home, which, as much as it was a really, really tough day and a really tough decision to make, to cancel events and to not put myself out there, it's something I had to do. It's something that I've done, many, many times since then as well, when I've had an event and I've had to cancel it the day before, purely because of how I am. So I'm very, very conscious of that, and trying to make sure that I'm giving myself a few days break in between events. And the events are very open, very honest, raw events. We go pretty deep into suicide, into mental health, into self-harm, and my own personal story, and talking about that for an hour, let alone for an hour 3 or 4 times a week.
You can feel it.
You can feel it. Yeah.
Now, how much do you feel each one still to this day? Because you've done hundreds and hundreds of them. So is it still the case that you're getting as invested every time, and every time it sort of takes a bit from you, or you're able to have a bit more detachment? Because obviously when you're talking about trauma a lot of the time, and not only are you sharing your own story, which is revisiting difficult times, but you're also holding space for people who are potentially struggling to be able to articulate themselves and be able to express themselves in that moment. So there's like a lot of sensitivities to manage, and that by itself can be pretty exhausting. And when we're having to manage those kind of traumatic situations or really difficult conversations, like emergency services, all of it, they have to get good at being able to detach and switch off to a certain extent. Do you think that crosses over to the work that you do, or that's not really been your experience?
Yeah, no, it most definitely is. And, you know, I think most people really, really close to me, if I go to an event, I normally am unreachable for about an hour. You know, I go back to the hotel if I'm traveling. I'll go back to the hotel, I'll turn the phone off, I'll chuck a movie on, and I might, you know, order some food or go for a walk. Or, yeah, that hour, maybe 2 or 3 hours after an event, I just need to be in my own space. Even last night, I had 2 events in country Victoria last night. You know, it was probably about a 4-hour drive home. And I was just lucky enough that my partner was with me the whole drive. So she was great. We were able to communicate the whole time. But if that was just me in the car, it would be a pretty tough trip. And it's been that many, many times where I've been interstate and you do an event and then you spend the next 3 or 4 hours just trying to calm down. And I suppose allow yourself to feel all the feelings, understand what's happening, and do your best to get to that next stage.
Do you ever question whether you should be doing it and whether it's worth it?
Many times. Yeah, many times. There's been a lot of times where I've got off stage and I've just thought, you know, that this is just too hard. It's just emotionally draining. It's physically draining. It's something that, you know, I'm bringing up the worst parts of my life every single time I get up there to complete strangers. And then I spend about 5 minutes in that mindset, and then I have, you know, men coming up to me, hugging me in tears, or tell me about their own mental health and opening up about their story, and that's what reminds me. You know, that's what gets me to the next level of, okay, this is hard. This is really hard, but this is helping.
Not as hard as not doing it.
Exactly right. Yeah, and if you can make an impact on one person, 2 people, and get some sort of message out there, it's going to be really, really hard, but that's what I'm after.
It's a sacrifice, though. Every time you're dredging that up, you are reliving it. And when you relive what happened, you also relive the emotions, and you get that physical response that goes along with it. And it's not like, you can just tell a story like that from your past and you don't have any emotional connection to it anymore. Every time there's someone getting up and speaking like that at an event, they're feeling it. I feel it every time I talk about losing my mate, which I do fairly often at public speaking events. And I always have that 5 seconds after I say his name or talk about the last conversation we had, and I still have that moment of pause. It gets me every single time. So you feel it every time. But I totally get what you're saying when you get the reward of achieving the goal that we're trying to achieve, where men come up to you afterwards and they do the thing that they've probably been unable to do for their whole lives, and they see someone like you unburden themselves and tell that story, and it gives them the faith and strength to be able to do the same. And that's an incredible thing that comes at a pretty great cost, but you can keep doing it as long as you're being really mindful and you've got the support around you, and you don't forget of what you're preaching, and to practice what you preach as well, because otherwise you're not going to be able to keep preaching it. And you have times like that too, because you're still human.
yeah, absolutely. And even on those events, you know, like you said, when you speak about your mate, I really find that every event is just a little bit different. It's essentially almost scripted at this point with how I run the events, but I find myself in different moments getting a different wave of emotion, a different style of delivering the message. Just yesterday when I was in this pub in Haywood, Victoria, it was a very, very raw, open conversation. But, you know, I went to a footy club a couple of weeks ago when I got to the point of the presentation where I bring up my daughter. For the first time in probably a year, I got up to the point and I just stopped, and I could just feel myself breaking down. And I had to really gather myself and remember that you've literally done this 100 times. You know what the next line is, but it was just, you know, a certain week, a certain day, a certain moment that, you know, all these emotions just came up. And as soon as I started to talk about her and everything came up to me and all that sort of stuff, I you know, almost lost it. So every presentation, every event, there's that different emotion, there's that different, you know, authenticity and rawness, I suppose.
That's what people actually connect with, though. They
Yes,
don't actually want that scripted response where you can tell that it's just the same regurgitation. They're after that connection and coming up with whatever you're going to say or that point you're going to make sort of on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, there's a bit of chaos about going up there and not knowing how am I going to feel today when I say this line. But I suppose that's what makes it real and that's what keeps it interesting too, because you don't want every day to be the same. You'd go nuts from doing that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've probably done about 300 to 350 events over the last 2 years, and not one of them has been the same. You know, and there's some that have been the hardest hour, 2 hours of my life, and then there's some that I've been able to get through and feel reasonably positive at the end of it. And I think that is the best thing about, you know, keeping it authentic and just trying to speak from the heart. And it allows everyone in the audience as well to really connect, because it isn't that, you know, that scripted, hey, this is what it is. This is a lot about suicide. This is what depression is. It's just raw. I swear a lot when I do the presentations, not when I'm in schools. It's really hard not to swear when you're at schools. You know, I try and stay authentic and raw and open about that, because I feel like that's what people need, that raw message to open it up. Human message, yeah.
Another big part of what you do is online content, and we see there's so much mental health content now. The topic's a lot more visible, which is a really good thing. There's online videos, there's podcasts, there's documentaries, there's events. From what you've experienced, what good is that doing?
It's just, I think it's just keeping that awareness alive every single day. And, you know, we get many, many messages and comments and stuff throughout, you know, Are You OK Day, Men's Health Week, Men's Mental Health Month, of people saying, why is it only a month, or why is Are You OK Day just one day? And, you know, that whole idea of it should be every day, it should be every day. Well, it is every single day. And that's why we try and do it every single day. You know, my big belief is that someone right now, or many, many people right now, are having the worst day of their life. So if we can push content every single day as much as we possibly can, the chances of someone reading that's having a really, really bad day are really high. So I think it's just to keep that awareness there and to keep the message there that whether it be about seeking support, whether it be about checking with your mates, checking with yourself, encouraging, you know, that positivity and the kindness and all these different things as well. But I think it's a really important way that we can spread the message as far wide as we possibly can. And we've had some great, you know, stories of people that have posted something to their timeline, and that's encouraged their mate to reach out to them and say, hey, you know, I can see you're sharing something related to mental health. I'm struggling a bit. Can we catch up and, you know, and have a talk about it? And that's exactly what we want.
How much is that happening?
It's like every single week we get messages like that. I was talking to one of our ambassadors in Queensland, and he met up with a guy that lived about an hour away from him, and they knew each other from you know 30, 40 years ago, and they've just reconnected because they both shared, you know, Shaka posts, and now they can go catch up and have a coffee and have a beer and just talk about their own mental health. So they've been able to reconnect just based on having an open conversation and being vulnerable. And so that sort of stuff is pretty amazing. You know, that's what we really, really love. And it's something that I always talk about at events. You know, most of the posts that I create on the Shaka, probably 50% of them, I'm doing them while I'm on the toilet. That's my office. I remember talking to a CEO of a company that we've done some amazing work with, and he said, this is my favourite post, this one here. And I said, yeah, I definitely did that in about 10 minutes.
I'll never look at the Shaka Project the same now.
But that's where I think the most. And we also try and keep, you know, the social media authentic as well. And, you know, I run 100% of the social media. So essentially what goes on the social media, most of it is how I'm feeling that day. You know, if there's a lot of stuff that's related back to, you know, just push through, odds are I'm trying to tell myself that, you know, odds are I'm having a pretty rough day. And, you know, if we have something that's happened over the weekend where we've heard about loss, we've heard about someone losing their father or their son, you know, we put up a reminder. These are the support services, and this is how many men we're losing, and this is what you can do, and this is how you can check in. And it is all based on what's happening and what's going on too. So again, trying to stay authentic.
And Shaka and Youngblood are aligned in our core purpose of trying to shift the culture of silence and shame around mental health. And that is intertwined with some traditional elements of Western masculinity, which is the men don't talk about their feelings. We just push on and get on with it no matter what happens. Don't show any emotion. Definitely don't ask for help. And I think we can agree that we want to change that attitude because that doesn't serve anyone. But I would certainly argue that there are a lot of elements about traditional masculinity that are positive, that are good for men and then good for women and children as well. How do we do both? How do we encourage both?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and there most definitely is that room, and even the necessity for that positive masculinity. You know, we definitely need that, not only for ourselves, but our partners, our family and friends. I think the masculinity that's really harming us men when it comes to mental health and suicide is not only the idea that we have to be tough and we have to be durable and push through, but the idea that our mates have to be. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you see a mate that comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm going to get off the drink. I'm going to quit alcohol for a month." That idea of, you know, saying, "Oh, mate, don't be a pussy. You know, come on, just have a beer with me." Or if your mate's had a couple of beers, doesn't want any more, come on, mate, have a couple of more. Have a couple of more. I think that's
Is that about enabling ourselves a lot of the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And that enabling the conversation as well. You know, enabling to be safe in an environment of your mates where you can go up to a mate and say, "Hey, I'm gonna quit drinking, or I'm gonna quit drugs, or I'm gonna quit gambling," and all these the trifecta of things that are leading to so much suicides here in Australia, and not being petrified to do it.
So why do you think mates push back against that when someone comes to them and says, "Hey, these are fucking me up. I need to stop them," and we go, "Oh, no, you don't." Why do you think we're saying that?
I think it's just the stigma. It's that whole stigma of, you know, as men in Australia, we grow up to drink beer, to you know, every now and then get on the party drugs, get on the bags, and you know, if there's a race on or the footy on and there's a multi on, you put your money on it. And you know, I'm not sitting here to say I've never done any of those three things, because I most definitely have. So have my mates, and it's not something that you know, every bloke out there is encouraging, but it's you know, you go to any pub in Australia on a Friday, Saturday night, and I guarantee you'll find a bloke there that is really struggling, and his coping mechanism is to be there at the pub on a Friday night. And the danger with that is that he's probably going to be there on the Friday night, he's probably going to be on the Saturday, and then when Sunday comes around and his mates aren't there, he's coming down from the drugs that he had over the weekend, he's got a hangover, his mental health there, and he checks his bank account balance and it's empty. That's when we lose our mates.
And your coping mechanisms are poison.
Exactly right. Yeah. And it's something that, you know, I see regularly is these, especially blokes, just getting behind all these different things like the punt or like drugs or like alcohol, and you know, there's absolutely
Glorifying
a level of glorifying it, encouraging it, and you know, if you know that your mate is struggling, and if you know that your mate is going through something, and you're still encouraging them to do all those things, that's the kind of shit that gets us in trouble. You know, that's what really allows the gateway for self-harm, for mental health, for suicide to open.
I think drinking, gambling, drugs, risky sexual behavior, it's all easy. It's easy to do.
Yeah.
It's all about chasing dopamine, and it's also about instant validation and gratification. And we can just reach for a drink or the bag or go on sports bet, and we can just disconnect at the touch of a button or whatever. And the alternative is hard, actually building yourself up, learning about yourself, learning about who your mate actually is, finding things that you can bond over, sitting there and saying, oh, what's that emotion that I'm feeling, and actually confronting it.
Yes.
That's hard. It's a lot harder.
It is.
And I think that's what's behind why we so readily go for the easy option. And perhaps the fight back when our mate says, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, is because I think deep down we think, I shouldn't be doing this either.
Yeah.
But I'm
100%.
scared. I'm scared of what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
And if you stop doing it, that's going to mean I'm going to have to think more seriously about confronting that. And that scares us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's vulnerability, and it's petrifying. It's so scary.
Because it's like, who am I if I'm not all this distraction?
Exactly right. Yeah. And we have these vices, and they're easy vices. If we have a bad week, we go to a beer, and the easy access to drink, to drugs, and to gambling and all those different things, the ultimate recipe for disaster when it comes to mental health. And it's something that we've really seen over the last couple of years when we go to footy clubs, and we normally go to a footy club on a Thursday night, and we get there at 7 o'clock, and by 7:30 half of the under 18s are half cut. And we see that as just a major sign of danger. It's fine to have a beer, absolutely. I'll never not encourage that, but it's you finish training, so let's get half a slab in on a Thursday night, or you finished a game, you played well, so here's a free slab to share. And it's an Australian thing, we've all been brought up with that idea. When I played footy from 15 through to 20, we drank every night after the game. It was just what we did, and it's that sort of stuff that really, really concerns me for the stats, for the statistics here in Australia, because majority of the young blokes that we lose here, especially in Victoria and New South Wales, are all based around sporting clubs, footy clubs, NRL clubs.
The hyper-masculine environment.
High masculinity environment, yeah, absolutely. And I've been a part of these clubs before where it's, you come, you play footy, or you play whatever sport you're playing, and then you go to the pub after, or you go to training and then you go to the pub after training. And it's almost like if you don't, you're probably not much of the team, mate. You're not really part of the team. And I've personally experienced that. I've personally seen that, and it's petrifying. It's really scary. It's something that one poor bloke is going to be able to attach himself to alcohol and drugs just to fit in, just to get by, just to, again, go for that easy vice. And Sunday morning, all that sort of stuff, all your mates, all the footy boys, they're nowhere to be seen, because they're going through their own stuff, and they're waking up hungover at their own house and coming down at their own house. And that's where the danger happens.
Also, we're all biologically different. We've all got different predispositions.
Yeah.
And we had an episode recently where a young guy got on to cocaine from his footy club at the age of 18, got offered it by the older boys, as is commonly the way. And the way his chemistry was, he just became an addict pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then ended up chasing that in a serious way for like 5 years, and totally blew his life up. And so I think we, based off our own personal experience, we have and also sort of the callous Aussie attitude of like, oh no, she'll be right, and right up to it's kind of funny how fucked up you can get.
Yeah.
As exactly. Being the attitude. But some people, you give highly addictive drugs, or you introduce to gambling or whatever, and they'll go totally off the deep end, and it can completely destroy their life. And just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean it won't happen to someone else. We have these attitudes with these things like, no, just a bit of fun. And that might be the case for you, but you never know how that's going to impact someone that you're introducing to that thing. So I think that's important for people to keep in mind, because you go, oh yeah, I have 10 beers and half a bag every weekend and I'm fine. You're probably not.
Yeah, exactly right.
But the other person might go way further than that much quicker.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's important to have some awareness around that too. We're not all the same, and it's the wrong path of, I think, trying to get to the right place, because what's underneath all these things, like why do we have to drink a slab after we win? It's because we want to connect more, right? We want to get closer together. We're trying to bond, trying to have a laugh, and it's based off that old attitude that we're trying to work against, which is, well, I can't connect with you on a deep level unless I'm fucked up.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know? And we're changing that now, where it's like, yeah, we can do that anyway.
Yeah.
So we don't need this gateway to get to that point where we can have a really deep and honest chat and hug each other and have a dance, or have a crack at a girl we're interested in, or whatever it might be. We should be able to be building ourselves up more and be more evolved than, the only way we're going to get there, which is fair enough. Of course, we want to be closer together. Of course, we want to connect, but we don't have to get absolutely smashed to get there. And actually, it seems like a good idea at the time, but when does it ever really, really end in the result that you want? You know, it's like this thing where you're chasing it, you think you want it, but when you actually get there or on the way, it just gets uglier and uglier, and people end up just like shit-faced or not able to connect at all, or making terrible mistakes.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all this chasing the dragon nonsense where you can't get it out of your head, like how good's this going to be?
Yeah.
But like, can you actually remember times when it was actually that good?
Yeah, exactly right.
You know?
Yeah, it's always a bit disappointment, but and I think that goes back to that culture as well, of culture of men, culture of environments. You know, sporting clubs especially. We've worked with many sporting clubs, footy clubs, rugby league clubs, cricket clubs, and some amazing ones out there, some really incredible ones out there that are doing everything for their players, for their volunteers, for their community, just amazing things. But, you know, we got approached by a company, and I won't mention who it is, a club, and they got recommended by one of their players. One of their players said, hey, we want to do a mental health event. These are the guys, Shaka, they'll come out, they'll do it. And this club approached us and said, hey, can you come out? And we said, yep, no worries. This is the event fee. You know, we're a non-for-profit. We have our bills, all that sort of stuff. This is how much it cost. And it was pretty quickly turned down, and we were sort of told that we weren't needed and we weren't wanted there for the price. So I did suggest, okay, let's do it. Let's do it at a discounted rate. And we ended up doing it, and it was a great event. It was absolutely awesome. And when I was doing some research leading into the event, I jumped on their Facebook page, this club's Facebook page, and I had a look at their social media, their social calendar for the year. So all the footy events throughout the year, all the netball events. And I worked out there was 21 rounds in the season in this league, and there was 19 events back to back that were all based around who can get, you know, the most drunk. It was last man standing, or it was a shot night, or it was the airport nights.
Sort of got to admire the creativity at that point as well.
Exactly right. 19 of them. Yeah. And you know, when I first went into them, I normally have a bit of a briefing with them before I do it, with the president and captain and all that sort of stuff. And when I sat down with them and they said, all right, what can we do after the event to keep promoting this? And they didn't like the fact that I said, hey, you can't do back-to-back drinking events like that. You can do back-to-back social events, but you know, if you're encouraging your players that every single weekend you must come here, I know it's to make money, it's to keep the club going, but there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to raise money for your club than just at the bar, you know, just at getting buckets of shots and this and that. And the culture around that is just, it's just showing that all these young kids as well, you know, the club was from under 12s up to, you know, reserves and seniors.
Yeah.
It's telling the young kids that, hey, to be a part of this club every weekend, you have to get drunk. You have to spend money on the club. You have to come here and get up to no good. It's a lot of fun. We make a lot of money from it, and then once a year we'll do a mental health thing. It comes down to all that culture of if you're running a company, a corporate, a community organisation, a footy club, whatever it is, the people are involved with, it has to be about those people.
Yeah, and it's not enough just to have a token day and say, oh yeah, we care about it. No, it's got to be your culture, and that takes a lot of work and effort and actually caring about it to do. And then your community members are going to be able to feel that you're actually taking that seriously. And then that if you have bad culture around that, then that's going to start to change it or make an actual impact. Because you can't have a culture that everyone knows is toxic in various ways, encourage that all year and then stick a Band-Aid on it at the end and be like, nah, she'll be right, because eventually she won't be right.
Yeah.
And then everyone's devastated and everyone doesn't know how that could have happened, and we never saw any of the signs, and there's a bunch of other people who are almost at that point themselves, but I feel like they can't say anything because evidently in that kind of culture you can't say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it as well, with a lot of companies, clubs, organisation have the idea that we don't really need it. No, everyone's here is they're fine. They're all good. They're all pretty well. And we've had many events where we sort of rock up and there's a little bit of communication that's like, oh yeah, okay, like just another one of these. It's almost like a tick of the box sort of thing.
Yep.
And it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to see men and women in the audience start to remember 6 months ago, 2 years ago, when they were at their lowest point. It makes them start to remember that, their family member that's going through something right now, or a family member or a friend that they lost to suicide. And there's never been one event over the last 3 years where there hasn't been at least 5 to 10 people come up to us and say, I've lived through the same thing, or I've lived through mental health, or I lost someone, or I lost this person, or I was in this crisis mode. It just, like the old saying going, we never know what anyone's going through, but we also never know what everyone's been through as well. So you get a room of 100 people and odds are 99 of them have experience.
Well, they're all human, aren't they?
Exactly right.
And what strikes me is if you go into a club or a community group and saying we can come and do this work, and they say, oh no, everyone's all good here, we're all sweet, they're probably the group that needs it the most.
Exactly
because
right.
that means that no one's talking.
Yeah.
But you can bet it's going on.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah, unless they know something that all of us don't.
I think it's pretty checking with them or something.
Pretty unlikely.
100%.
So there's some elements of toxic masculinity around this, and that's a phrase that's like a real buzzword, and there's a number of different definitions of it, and it upsets people in various ways. And one of the definitions is it's a perception of manliness that perpetuates dominance, aggression, violence, and narcissism at the expense of others. And pressures, like we've been talking about, pressures men to actually act in a way that's harmful to themselves and to others, and makes that a good thing.
Yeah.
But then there's this other part of masculinity, that other traits that also get condemned by some pockets of society, where they say, oh, we should make men placid and harmless, and take away this innate sense of, call it competitiveness or aggression or that fire, and saying that that's the problem, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. And
Absolutely,
I think that, well, we're made this way for a reason, and men and women are different in various ways, and that just makes sense, and it needs to remain the case. And that while we certainly shouldn't be encouraging in young boys these toxic elements that are causing harm, we also shouldn't be saying to them, hey, just by virtue of you being a man, you're already a problem. You're already in the wrong.
100%.
You're already causing issues before you've done anything. You're a villain for some reason just because you're a man, and making them feel like they're a loaded gun just because of how they've been born, and saying, you shouldn't be strong. You shouldn't be assertive. You shouldn't feel like you need to be a protector, because I would argue that those are good things that we should be
absolutely
encouraging in young men. And I think perhaps one of the most dangerous things you can do is not give men that self-confidence, and not encourage boys to build themselves up mentally and physically, because what comes with that is self-respect, valuing yourself, loving yourself. And then what comes from that is valuing and respecting others in return.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you do that, they value and respect you. And then I think you treat people well by and large.
Absolutely.
And I think the actual danger comes in when you are told that, no, you shouldn't try to build yourself up. You should stray away from all those things because that's what makes men bad. And then we feel like we are powerless, like we do have to latch on to people to try to control people, that we don't have that sense of self-assuredness and confidence in ourselves. Then I think that's what actually makes men dangerous, particularly as they get older, because then we don't value and love ourselves or others like we should. And that means that we are then lashing out and then causing problems.
Yeah. And
that actually the best thing that we could do is to be encouraging young men to be like, yeah, be strong, find out who you are, see the value in looking after the girls in your life, see the value in serving your community. And it's so important that boys and men are feeling valued in return, because that's going to make us want to do the right thing. And I think we should be painting the picture of masculinity in that way, where it's like, I would say being a man it's about being responsible for yourself, for your own health. And it's about being responsible for looking after other people and caring for other people. And there's a lot of other stuff that you can put around that, but I think that's really core. And if you've got that, people are going to act accordingly and they're going to treat each other well. And I think that ties in massively with this huge epidemic of domestic violence that we're seeing in this country at the moment, where you can't open a paper any day of the week at the moment without seeing that another woman's been murdered, and men are constantly terrorizing and killing women in this country. And underneath that is just a whole lot of scared men who have been through a lot of pain themselves, a lot of unresolved trauma, a lot of things that they've never dealt with, probably raised in similar environments themselves, and deeply insecure. And that leads to that result. And I think men who end up dying by suicide probably share a lot of those same feelings. And instead of harming others, they're harming themselves. But I think it comes from that same place. And that one of the most important things we can be doing as a society is teaching men to love themselves for who they actually are, and fostering all those positive traits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than saying, well, you're destined to be evil because you're a man, so we just want to put you in a cage or try to stop you from doing what inevitably you're going to end up doing.
Yeah. 100%. I completely agree. I think it's a scary time in the world for men in a lot of ways, because there is a bit of that idea that we are all painted under the brush of being evil and being monsters and being unhinged, and it has a massive effect. I don't know if you saw the Barbie movie.
I did.
You did, and we won't go too far into it, but I remember walking out of that movie, and I remember standing in the movie theater, just outside the movie theater, and I felt really like ashamed to be standing there and almost embarrassed. Like, as a man, I was standing there watching all these women walk past me, and I felt really, really uncomfortable. And I think that goes to say a lot about the conversation, and a lot about the idea that a lot of men do feel that insecurity about just simply being a man, and just simply showing some vulnerability and trying to love themselves and have self-care and almost be aware of their own general health, their mental health, and almost allowing themselves to really open up and be themselves without the risk of being labelled as toxic, or labelled as just another guy, or labelled as a monster and stuff like that too. And we get it all the time with fathers coming to us and say, hey, I haven't seen my kids in 6 months because I did the wrong thing in a relationship, and now I'm paying the ultimate price and I can't seem to get my kids back. And then there's, men that refuse to leave the house because, they're just so petrified that they're not that, that stereotypical guy. They don't go to the gym, or they don't have a six pack, they don't have tattoos, and they don't look like that stereotypical Aussie bloke. So that self awareness and that self esteem is non-existent, and that's a lot where a lot of men are getting into harm as well, and leading into drugs, alcohol, suicide, self-harm, and all these different aspects too. So I think it is a dangerous thing to talk about, the masculinity. And I think a big misconception when people say, hey, you have to be vulnerable, is that when we say be vulnerable, that wipes out the strength, which it doesn't. Vulnerability and strength can coexist. They can essentially be right next to each other. And, there's so many examples of that happening, where you can be strong, you can be a protector of your family, of your kids, and everyone around you, and you can be vulnerable enough to know that all of that is not something that you not only have to do and have to be, but it is also something that as yourself and as who you are, you aspire to be as well. You aspire to be that protector. You aspire to be that person that can be, your daughter's Superman. And it's something that I always talk about with my daughter, is that, when she looks at me, she sees a big, strong dad, and I'm her Superman. I'm her superhero. And when I really realised that many, many times she's seen her Superman and superhero break down and cry, that scared the crap out of me. I was like, fuck, what's she going to think of me now? Is she going to think I'm still strong? Is she going to think I'm a strong dad? Because that's what a strong dad is. He's a strong dad. And then it took me a really, really long time to understand that just because I cry in front of my daughter and get upset and show my emotions, that doesn't have to actually take away that I'm still a strong father, that I'm still a protector, that I'm still Superman to her. And I think that's a great way that we can almost look at that with our friends, with our relationships, is that you can be that protector, you can be that man, you can be strong and strong-willed, even when you're opening up and being that vulnerability, that vulnerable person at the same time.
I would argue that makes you a stronger man than
Absolutely.
you otherwise
Yeah.
could be, because what's harder, bottling it up and trying to push through and pretending to yourself like you don't have that inside of you, or actually being brave enough to express it with that fear there.
100%.
One of the ultimate fears that you could have as a dad is being perceived in a way that you don't want to be perceived by the person that you love most.
Yeah.
And you're able to do that anyway because you believe in the importance of being 100% who you actually are and showing her that. I would argue that takes the most strength
100%,
of anything.
yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of trying to shift the perspective for men to look at it that way, where it's like, well, vulnerability or honesty or just fessing up to how you're actually going takes a shit ton of strength because it's fucking hard to do.
It is, yeah.
And anyone who does it will say, man, that was so tough and it's a big deal. And that's why so many people don't do it as well, because it's really difficult, but it's also the best thing that you can do. And people will also say that, why didn't I do that sooner?
Yeah.
And why did I spend potentially decades of my life thinking that I had to be this unyielding rock till I inevitably end up having a blow up or taking myself out or causing irreparable damage. And what we try to say a lot on this podcast is the vast majority of men want to be the most effective they can be. They want to be the protector. They want to be the provider. They want to be the man. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be the man. And the way that you do that is by having the capacity to actually admit to being human and bring the people in who need to be brought in at the time when that needs to happen, and be brave enough to let yourself go and not bottle it all up and not bullshit and lie to yourself and lie to other people. That's the strongest thing you can do. And if you can do that, you're going to be the best that you can be in all those areas. And that's how you get there. And you can't actually get to be that strong and be that great of a dad and a partner and a friend and a person if you can't face up to yourself, because that takes the most balls of anything.
Yeah, and I think vulnerability invites vulnerability as well.
Oh,
I think
well, look at it. That's what you do every day.
Yeah, exactly right.
Those people wouldn't be coming up to you and talking maybe for the first time if you hadn't just done it.
Hadn't said anything, yeah. And I think it's really funny. It's a good example. Whenever I go out to, I might go to like a friend's birthday or out to a function, and if I meet someone new, first thing I ask, what do you do for a living? They tell me, and they ask me what I do for a living. Within 15 seconds, they're telling me about their life, about what's going on with them, their experiences. And my partner was recently with me when we were at a pub, and she knew this bloke for a very, very long time, and didn't really know much about his past or that he had been through anything. Just thought he was just a bloke, just a good bloke. And she said he just opened up to you within 15 seconds and told you more about him than I ever knew, and I've known him for 10 years. And again, it's just about saying, hey, I work in mental health. This is what I do. It's not even about saying that. It's opening up a conversation, being vulnerable, and it's like a permission slip.
Yeah, it's permission.
It allows blokes to.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because the stigma is, men don't want to talk.
Yeah,
but you
absolutely.
would probably say differently. As soon as you get a chance to talk, people are dying to do it because they might live a life, and more often than not do, where they don't feel like they can talk to anyone around them.
Yeah.
And then they meet someone who gives them that permission, and it's like, because we know we've got that feeling inside of us, like, I really do want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Even if I know I've got all this apprehension, like I'm not supposed to do that because a man doesn't do that. You're drawn to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I think we do want to look after ourselves deep down, and we do know when something's wrong, and we do want to unburden ourselves and try to understand whatever's causing us this. Yeah. But if we can't get over ourselves enough to do it, then it just continues to fester and just cut us up. And
absolutely.
We can't blame people for that. But at the same time, times are changing, and there's more and more examples out there of men showing that they were in that position, and that there is action that you can take to make things better. And there's certainly action you can take to make things worse as well. And then it's not like you work it all out and now you're vulnerable all the time and you go out on the grass and sit in a circle and
it's definitely not that.
That's what you do all day now. And you don't have to drive the truck anymore or go and go and do your day job. You just spend your whole time talking about your feelings. That's not what we're saying. And I do think that some men, particularly older generations, sort of see it that way, where it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to fucking do that because I've got shit to do.
Yeah.
And that attitude is needed sometimes. Yeah. And stoicism gets a bad rap for being like, if you're stoic, it means you have no emotions and you're just like talking to drywall and you can't get anything out of you. And actually, the definition of stoicism is not being driven by your emotions, being able to actually respond rather than be ruled by your impulses, which is actually a really good thing to be teaching men. And it is good for men to be able to push through sometimes and get stuff done, because stuff needs to get done. Things need to get built. Money needs to be made. Food needs to be put on the table. So don't stop doing that. But just when you know that you've got something building up inside of you and it's not going away, you just can't keep pretending like it's going to.
Yeah.
And if it's not good enough, if your own life doesn't mean enough, the life of the people that you care about are going to be massively affected in a negative way if you can't face up to it.
Exactly right. I think it's even just about, opening up that little door to vulnerability and to mental health, in your life. And as soon as you open that door with someone, whether it be your best mate, someone you just met, your partner, whoever it might be, but that door's always there. That little conversation that you can get on with your life. You can go to work, you can do all this sort of stuff. And then the minute that you wake up and think, geez, I'm having a rough day, you think, all right, here's my access point. I can just go in this door. I remember that 3 months ago, I talked to Sean at the pub about mental health. So I'm just going to send him a message and see if I can chat. And, I always say that I don't reckon we'll find a bloke in Australia that has not been through something, whether it be childhood trauma, whether it be some sort of really, really horrible mental health trauma, or just a bad day or a bad couple of days. And it's not about getting them all to come out and say it, but it's about just allowing, say, hey, like, it's all right if you're right now. That's good. We love that you're okay. We love that you're here. We love that you're doing good. But just put this down here. This is just a little door, just in case that one day, maybe it may not ever happen, but that one day that you wake up and you think, shit, I need something. I need something different. That door's there. And I think that's a lot to do with the conversation that we try and push. Is it's not just for today, not just for tomorrow. And you know, we have some amazing ambassadors from across the country, and they're always asking us, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to share posts? Do you want us to do this? And our response is, we just want you to be that person. We just want you to do what you need to do to create a conversation in your little circle. You don't have to share posts. You don't have to sell T-shirts. Don't do any of that sort of stuff. But just be the person that's there for someone, or that can actually go and talk to someone. And you know, we always encourage, when someone puts up a post or shares a post of one of ours or one of the other mental health organisations, someone might see that now. So it might be Monday, they see that, and then in 6 months' time, they're having a rough day, and they remember who posted that. They remember that that's the person they can talk to. So yeah, I think there's big power in just giving our mates and giving each other and everyone around us that little door of, it might be all right now and that's awesome, we're super happy for you, but just put this here just in case. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. Love that analogy. And it's similar to planting seeds in people's minds as well.
Sure.
Like, you never know when that's going to be needed, but you can guarantee if you're human and you're going through life, you're going to come up against the things we all come up against. And just having somewhere that you can go, having someone you can go to, somewhere you can go mentally, knowing that it's all right to be able to express that. That means when you get up and you end up in that place, you're not trapped.
Yeah,
you've got somewhere to go. And I think, yeah, just trying to frame it that way, that's a big part of it, isn't it? It's like we're trying to frame stuff in a way that's going to be palatable to men, where we can think of it like that in practical terms.
Yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, I should have that tool there, because we're always prepping for when shit goes wrong in life. Everything and like else, what can we do to be prepared? And so phrasing it that way, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a good analogy to think of is, you know, if you've got a mate that has a ute and you need to move house, he's the first person you're going to call. You know, it's the same sort of thing. If you give your mates, you know, utes all over the country and you need a bloke in Queensland to move, that's the first bloke you call. So it's the same with mental health. You make those little connections just in case, just one of those days that you need to move house, you need to do this, you need to have a chat, that access is there.
Nice.
I've got a ute, so I always get called.
I'm not surprised. What has all this done for you? All this service?
It's changed my life completely. It's changed the way that I look at not only my own mental health, but the mental health of my mates, the mental health of strangers as well. The hardest thing about doing this project is it's not getting any better. You know, when we look at the stats, they're not getting any better. Every single year they're increasing. Every single year we're losing more people. Every single year we're getting to the point where, you know, we just really, really wonder when we're going to start to make progress, when we're going to start to see more conversation and more help from everyone that we can possibly ask for help.
And ultimately see the numbers change.
To see those numbers change. Yeah, that's the hardest thing about it. You know, we can have a really good year with 150 events and think we make a really good impact. And then, you know, I sit there on Christmas Day and I just think there's you know, 44 men that aren't here on Christmas Day just from this week. And, you know, that sounds really dark and gloomy, and it's probably not what you want to be thinking about on Christmas Day, but when you're in the space, that's what you think about. And that sucks. That really, really sucks that right now, you know, we're sitting here today having a good chat, but right now all across Australia, there's men and women that are having their last day, There's men and women that are having their worst day, and there's men and women that just can't do it, and that really breaks me. That's really hard. It's just, you want to be able to do more, and you want to be able to do as much as you possibly can. And it's not about saving the world. We're always going to have trauma. We're always going to have loss. But it's when you hear the stories of, my son was 17, or my dad just turned 40, and we had a great weekend, and I just got married to my husband, and we've got 2 kids. That shit hurts. Seeing kids grow up without their parents. As a parent that's also been to the brink of that, and has almost been one of those stats. When I think about that now, of those moments when I was in that point, and imagining my daughter without me, that that just destroys me and breaks my heart into a million pieces. And to know that today, tomorrow, Wednesday, the next day, there is fathers that are going to lose their battle, and there is daughters that are going to lose their fathers, and sons that are going to lose their fathers. That that sucks.
Yeah, the losses hit real hard.
Really
in this
hard.
space. We're talking about people's lives all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you make the wins count?
Oh, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. My wins are. I was lucky enough this year to write a book, a children's book that was based on my daughter, and it was all about mental health and all about feelings and emotions.
Wicked.
And my reward is her coming home and saying that she read it to the whole class, and I've got a little cousin that she was having a presentation day at school about feelings and emotions, and she took that book as a description of how to express your emotions. And whenever you ask my daughter what daddy does, she always says, he talks to other daddies about being happy and about being sad.
That's a good summary.
It's great. It's awesome. That's what positivity I come from it, because she's going to grow up with that in her life. And, when she goes through stuff and when she struggles, she'll know that dad's there, and that she'll have people in her life that she can talk to. And that's the positives for me. The positives are the people we meet. We meet some amazing, amazing people that are doing incredible stuff. People that have lost someone. One of our ambassadors yesterday that we were at an event for, she lost her husband about a year and a half ago, and ever since, she's held about 5 events in her area, just all raising funds and awareness. And every event has been absolutely huge. And I remember I was speaking at one of her events, and I mentioned that when we have loss in our life, we normally go one of 2 ways, and there's no wrong or right way to go, but it's either we go away and we deal with it as best we possibly can, and we get through life, we keep taking steps. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it that way. But there is a group of people that, especially when it comes to suicide or illness or sickness, that take it and they try and make something of it. And that's what she's done. And she's done an amazing job. And I'm lucky enough to be able to see that around the country every single day. Are these people that have lost people in their life to mental health and suicide, that wake up and want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And they use the worst day of their life and the worst moment of their life as a tool to encourage others to talk about it so it doesn't happen again. So they're the kind of positive stuff I get from it. I hug a lot of people. That's the best thing about my job is, I meet these people that, I met a woman yesterday that she said that her and her sons, when they get home, they're like, "Hey, did you like the Shaka post today? How good was that one? And how good was this one?" They've got some of them printed on their fridge, and I gave her a big hug yesterday and got a photo with her, and that sort of stuff I absolutely love, because it just shows that you have an impact in that house, and you don't really see the impact sometimes of what you do in anything in life, but when you have little conversations like that, when this mother says, me and my 17-year-old sons talk about the post and we say which one's our favourite and we print them out, put them on the fridge. That's cool. That's what really, really makes me happy, and they're the real positives out of this whole thing.
And I think given the fact that we're not seeing those numbers come down yet, it is easy to get down on it. And I do think myself as well, when I hear similar stories and think about all the work that gets put in, and it is easy to slide into negativity and be like, well, what's the point? And of course, that's the challenge of it. But another way of thinking about it, which is how I think about it, I don't think we look at it this way enough, which is, where would we be without all this?
Yeah.
You know, if we didn't have thousands of people around the country having these conversations and pushing these initiatives and putting in all this effort, where would we be then? And you can guarantee it'd be a whole lot worse.
Absolutely.
And we know that culture takes time to change, and Rome wasn't built in a day, and we are making big strides. And just because you're not seeing it reflected really obviously at the end of the line in the suicide statistics doesn't mean that there isn't a evident groundswell of people changing culture in Australia and around the world. And I've got no doubt that we will see that proof in the pudding eventually. And it's not like we're waiting till that time for a payoff, because we're already seeing that payoff every day. It's just that the negatives and those hard hits, they stick out even more. But in the messages that you get, in the conversations that you have with people talking about how your talk or your post helped them, and for people who aren't us, who just have these conversations within their friendship group and can connect better with their friends than they ever had before, or finally were able to talk to their dad about something other than the weather and sport or whatever it is. Like, those are massive payoffs, and that's real, and that's happening now, and that wouldn't be happening if we weren't out here having these conversations, doing this stuff. And that's what I think we need to focus on.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what I try and focus on as much as I can, and also try and reflect back of 15 years ago, none of this was happening. You know, there was no conversation about mental health. There was no encouragement of men to seek help or anyone to seek help. There was nothing that we could really quickly access to. There was a couple of charities, there was a couple of foundations and stuff, but in a world where everything is on our phones, we need to have that accessibility where everyone wants to look at their phone and be involved in that world. There's got to be more stuff that can get that attention of everyone. And again, 10, 15 years ago, it would never happen. Even when we started, there was not a whole lot of conversation there. So over the last 5 years, especially after COVID, it definitely has changed. And that is it's an encouraging thing for us, that although the stats aren't making that big impact that we can see an impact when it comes to just more conversation, more awareness, more support services out there, more companies, more podcasts, more TV shows, athletes coming out and talking about mental health, celebrities, all that sort of stuff, people backing it. So those small shifts and those small changes, they're the things that I think in 10, 15 years will start to add up, and we'll start to see some changes for sure.
Yeah. And so I think it's about not waiting till then to feel the satisfaction and feel rewarded, and understand that what you're doing does mean something, and it does matter, and it is worth doing, and feel that and appreciate that now, and let it keep firing you up, and bloody look after yourself so you can keep going, man.
Yes, exactly right. Just on cue. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's taking the small wins, you know, taking those little wins of the cool stories that you get with supporters or with people that follow the page and or listen to a podcast that you're on and stuff like that. I think that's the best bit of encouragement we need. We don't need to sell 1 million t-shirts or anything like that. It's more just about having those little wins where people are aware that we're here, that there's other companies there, and that the conversation's definitely out there. I think that's a big one too, just to keep encouraging it and keep keep everyone talking about it as much as we possibly can.
All good, bro.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.